Welcome Chosen X. You open to a hush that feels deliberate, as though attention itself is folded inward to make room for a single, slow breath. In that space you sense a current that is neither thought nor noise but a direction that arrives like a sunrise across a still sea. It asks nothing of you beyond presence. You learn quickly that presence is not passive, it arrives as a form of listening that reshapes how moments fall into place. When you practice this kind of attention, you begin to notice how small signals in the world begin to resonate with your inner tone. A tossed phrase gains weight. A passerby pauses in a pattern that echoes an intention you carried without fanfare. These encounters are subtle confirmations, the quiet replies from a universe that now recognizes the steady frequency you emit. Influence emerges less as coercion and more as an invitation issued from a calm center. Your first lessons are practical and unfamiliar. You will cultivate an image that is clear and steady, like a lantern kept low so its light will not startle sleep. You will hold that image with curiosity, not with demand. As you sustain it, simple openings appear, a colleague arrives with new clarity, a disagreement softens, a timing that seemed impossible resolves with an ease that almost feels accidental. Those occurrences are not magic tricks but the natural yield of disciplined attention. Fear will arrive as an honest companion. It will whisper of ego and shortcut, of the seductive rush that comes from orchestrating outcomes. Your task is to meet that fear with precision. You pause before sending thought outward. You measure intention against the measure of care. In many moments the wiser choice is restraint. To withhold is sometimes the purer expression of power because it preserves the autonomy of others and honors the unfolding of their own becoming. Symbols will begin to gather like bookmarks for memory. A ring, a pebble, a line scratched into the wood of a table becomes a practice object that signals a return to depth. When the world accelerates, you touch these small tokens and remember to center. Rituals are not superstitions but scaffolds that train perception. They help you translate a private discipline into repeated habits so that attention returns when distraction presses. You will also discover that silence can be a force. When voices swell around a table, your composed stillness condenses into an axis that others orbit. Their opinions compress not because you dominate but because your containment invites them to follow. In rooms and corridors, the absence of a loud claim can produce a clearer map of what needs tending. People will find themselves reaching toward the thought you offered as if it had appeared there on its own. Practice opens the possibility of gentle transference. In a meditative state, you may hold a compassionate image for a friend who drifts in confusion. Later they will report a new clarity, a decision that felt like a discovery rather than a suggestion. You will learn to resist the urge to arrange exact outcomes and instead offer seeds that can be tended by the rhythms of another life. This discipline requires humility and patience, traits that deepen as your skill grows. Throughout these beginnings, ethics must be your lodestar. Power without tenderness is a brittle instrument. Intention without consent corrodes trust. Choose always the work that enlarges rather than consumes. Track the ways your influence changes not only events but relationships. If a pattern of dependency emerges, step back. If gratitude blooms, let it be the quiet meter by which you measure success. Remember that mastery unfolds slowly. Do not expect spectacle. Most of your days will be ordinary, and that ordinariness is the soil in which real transformation grows. Keep a soft attention, practice with curiosity, and return often to the practice objects that steady you. In the small acts of care you will find the architecture of lasting influence. The beginning is modest. The consequences will not always be immediate, but they will accumulate, and over time their pattern will reveal a shape that only patience can draw. You find yourself before a glass that returns more than shape. Light slips through it like a confession, and the reflection it offers is a history rewritten in present tense. You study the face and notice how habit and inheritance have folded into flesh like fingerprints. The line of your jaw holds decisions you were taught to accept. Your shoulders bear habits that belong to others. Beneath skin, a ledger of small compromises rests in muscle and bone. This discovery starts as discomfort and then becomes a curriculum. You learn to read the body as a language that predates speech, tracing syntax in a collarbone and cadence in breaths beneath the ribs. Embodiment becomes the instrument where inner aim meets outer consequence. Sometimes the mirror shows a fit and sometimes seams where light leaks. Those gaps open thresholds. At first you recoil, wanting to smooth irregularities so the reflection conforms. That impulse is ancient and reasonable. Belonging often asks you to flatten edges. But flattening exacts a cost. It strips texture and replaces nuance with a safe uniform. When you resist that smoothing, you enter precarious clarity. People who once recognized you with ease may hesitate. They will search for scripts and fail to find them. Their confusion becomes a mirror too, reflecting assumptions never examined. In that bewilderment there is opportunity, because when others pause you can offer a steadier presence than spectacle. Your steadiness will feel like gravity to those orbiting uncertainly. The glass also reveals multiplicity. In quiet hours the surface fractures into a corridor of possible selves, each wearing a different answer. You walk that corridor and learn not to choose rashly. Some doors lead to rooms where you repair relationships with grace. Other doors open into halls where regret sits like a listening animal. Encountering those versions is moral education. You speak to them gently, accepting their truth while refusing captivity to old patterns. Reclaimed fragments become tools that widen capacity instead of chains that bind. Symbol gathers into a private lexicon. A scratch on a table can hold a vow. A pebble in a pocket may remind you to temper speech with patient listening. Rituals do not sanctify but train attention, and attention is currency of transformation. When you place meaning into small acts you make them repeatable without strain, and repetition becomes a field where habits bend toward tenderness. Fear visits because truth feels like exposure. Shame may surface as old stories seek to reassert control. You will need practices to return you to center, breath counted into 4, a hand to the sternum, an exhale that lengthens thought margins. These are not theatrics. They are stabilizers that enable a careful life of awareness. The body remembers what words name, and gentle acknowledgement loosens knots of secrecy. As fluency grows you realize presence in flesh transforms not by domination but by calibration. A meaningful touch, a steady gaze, a voice that steadies rather than commands can shift others because you have aligned inside first. Power behaves like an instrument whose tuning determines resonance. Careful tuning brings harmonies and prevents fracture. Your shadow keeps a ledger of small betrayals and quiet mercies. It will offer accusation and tenderness. Name it without shame and listen. When you practice gentle inquiry the shadow teaches about limits and repair. Through that dialogue you reclaim authority over narratives that once claimed you. Let this companion become a teacher rather than a jailer in your days. Before sleep place a palm against the hollow where ribs expand and say a sentence to the self you avoided. Say it without theater. Let the words sink like seeds and then rest. In morning light some worn tendency will show less insistence. This part closes with patience that is not resignation but preparation. You learn to harbor complexity inside a body that will carry choice into the world. You walk into a room where reality seems stitched together from borrowed threads, each seam humming with the echo of choices once made. Light pools and unlikely hollows and shadows hold the memory of decisions you thought forgotten. Here the world appears less like a landscape and more like a woven thing, a tapestry whose pattern shifts in response to a focused gaze. Your presence alters an invisible tension, fibers that had held a shape loosen and allow a new axis to enter. At first you notice small distortions. A casual remark gains unexpected weight. A passerby pauses and then rearranges course. People keep ordinary concerns, yet beneath the surface an architecture moves. You learn the grammar of these shifts. Words matter less than cadence. When you sit with steady clarity and let attention travel like a slow needle, motifs appear in others as if a secret embroidery had been passed between you. There is an art to this labor. You must attend without clinging. The fabric answers a presence that is neither hungry nor timid. A tight grip will pull threads apart while indifference leaves them unmoved. Cultivate a tone of regard that holds possibility without collapsing it. This manner of watching separates accidents from patterns and allows small corrections to ripple outward. Many mistake these nudges for luck because the adjustments are subtle. Symbols surface to contain meaning. A moth pinned to a page can become tenacious. A lamp left half-lit becomes a marker for tempering haste. You collect such objects as bookmarks, not as idols. They are reminders of a practice rather than demands. Carry them into rooms as private compasses and they will help return posture to deliberate softness when distraction presses. Resistance arrives from outside and within. You will wrestle with the temptation to force quicker patterns when patience stalls. A hurried intention unravels the work of weeks. The lesson is to prefer craft over spectacle. Durable patterns require seasons. Quick victories fray. Then there is the ethical calculus. When you see how threads bend, ask whether a pole grants freedom or steals discovery. Learn to read consent in ways that are not always spoken. An open brow, a softened jaw, or relaxed stance can signal permission. When signs are absent, restraint is care. Measure success not by outcomes you claim but by how lightly your touch alters paths. Practice can feel solitary. Days will pass when nothing perceptible bends in response. 10 small rituals that renew calm attention. Slow breath sets tempo. A counted breath steadies the hand. Quiet notes hummed under breath anchor the nervous system and sharpen perception. Over weeks these small acts rewrite habits and allow you to move through crowds with a calm that invites alignment. Sometimes the work produces a visible seam. A quarrel dissolves with a single reframed question. An artist selects a different hue because of a phrase lodged in their ear. A proposal receives an unlikely nod. These are not triumphs of dominance but gentle architecture. They confirm that the woven surface occasionally yields to patient shaping. Endings arrive differently here. You will rarely witness grand finales. More often a subtle tilt appears and becomes self-sustaining. Trust these slight inflections as the currency of influence. The pattern you weave will not shout. In time it will reveal an enduring shape born of attention seasoned with respect. Yet this craft asks for humility as well as patience. You will find that influence woven with reverence leaves space for mystery and for the unforeseen gifts of other lives. Sometimes a fabric you altered will return a shape you did not expect yet cherish. Take these surprises as proof that your work is dialogue, not monologue. In the quiet that follows, allow gratitude to settle into the frame and remember that true mastery softens the world rather than flattens it. Keep offering subtle care and your habitual attentions will gather into a map of change. You enter a realm where reality bends as if it had been painted in layers of thought rather than formed in solid matter. Each moment vibrates with an echo of choice, subtle and persistent, urging you to notice the spaces between what is said and what is felt. Here, perception is malleable and consciousness a sculptor wielding attention as both chisel and brush. You sense that your own awareness is no longer contained, it spills outward, brushing against the edges of minds around you, shifting their trajectories with nothing more than focused regard. You learn that influence is not imposition but resonance, a quiet attunement to the currents already moving through the world. The world is both more fragile and more responsive than you imagined. A glance held longer than expected can tilt the balance of tension in a conversation. A deliberately sustained pause can invite thought to settle where it had been unsettled. You begin to recognize that intention, when maintained with clarity and calm, does not need amplification to propagate. Thoughts, like water, follow the path offered, and you are learning to fashion channels through your own disciplined focus. The subtlety is crucial. Too much force fractures the current, too little and the energy disperses without effect. The practice demands an almost paradoxical combination of patience and precision. Symbols continue to accrete meaning, each object, gesture, and sound acting as a locus for attention. A candle flickering in shadow teaches vigilance. A deliberate step upon creaking floorboards becomes a marker of measured timing. Even the smallest act, when laden with awareness, becomes a node in a web of potential, connecting you with unseen influences and unseen observers. These objects and rituals do not hold power themselves, they are anchors for the discipline of your mind, reminders of the necessity to sustain attention with subtlety and care. They cultivate a rhythm that allows influence to flow naturally, as opposed to being forced or contrived. Fear and doubt are inevitable companions. You encounter them both as internal voices and as reflections in the behavior of others. There is temptation to overreach, to nudge outcomes prematurely, to seize for satisfaction what patience would eventually yield with grace. Here, mastery is measured by restraint, the capacity to hold your focus steady, to maintain ethical consideration while watching the effects of subtle influence unfold. You learn that a careful observer often achieves more than a bold actor, for others are drawn to the consistency and calm embedded in your presence. Your body becomes a vessel of subtle command. Posture, gaze, breath each contributes to a field of influence without a word being spoken. You discover that people unconsciously attune to these cues, aligning their thoughts and emotions in resonance with the clarity of your focus. Influence emerges as a mutual exchange, an invisible choreography where your inner steadiness invites corresponding alignment in others. The exercise is neither coercion nor domination, it is a guided unfolding in which awareness operates as both compass and container. Meditation deepens your capacity. In stillness, intention radiates outward, penetrating beyond immediate perception. You focus on a friend or situation and allow images of clarity and resolution to form without attachment to their exact materialization. Later, the results manifest in ways that appear spontaneous yet are guided by the subtle infrastructure of your sustained attention. The lesson is humility. Even in influence, outcomes are shaped by the interplay of forces that extend beyond any single will. You are an architect of possibility, not a commander of fate. This practice also trains ethical discernment. As you shape currents in others, you observe whether your interventions cultivate freedom or inadvertently impose limitations. True mastery is inseparable from care. Influence must respect autonomy. You calibrate every thought, every gesture, every act of attention against this ethical standard, knowing that sustainable change is inseparable from consent, whether explicit or inferred through observation and attunement. Your influence is an echo of intention carried lightly, a resonance rather than a command. Patterns emerge over time, quiet and durable. Small moments accumulate into a coherent structure of effect, tensions dissolve, conversations settle into harmony, decisions form with less friction. You witness the results not with triumph but with mindful recognition. Influence, sustained and respectful, does not announce itself, it manifests in the subtle transformation of energy, in the recalibration of attention, in the gentle shift of choices toward alignment with clarity and intention. Each day, each breath, each deliberate focus contributes to this unfolding architecture, teaching that power and patience are inseparable companions. You awaken in a space where boundaries feel porous, where the ordinary delineations between self and world soften into a continuum of motion and reflection. Here, influence is not external but a vibration that arises from the depth of awareness, threading through moments, gestures, and pauses. The air carries more than oxygen, it hums with potential, charged by intention articulated in silence, and you sense that every subtle choice radiates outward, bending the field of perception around you. To be fully present is to realize that attention itself carries weight, that the mere act of noticing can alter trajectories, and that the mind, when disciplined and steady, becomes both a lens and a lever. In this realm, the art of observation is inseparable from the act of shaping. You notice how people move in patterns that reveal unspoken desires, and you recognize that alignment comes not from coercion but from resonance. A sustained glance, a breath held with care, a posture that conveys calm authority, these are tools of subtle orchestration, instruments capable of guiding attention without command. The ethical imperative is immediate, to act with precision and restraint, allowing others autonomy to remain intact while cultivating a harmonious flow of influence. Here, mastery demands patience, humility, and the capacity to measure the impact of even the smallest interventions. Objects and rituals become symbols in your practice, each serving as an anchor for intention. A lamp dimmed at precise intervals, a stone held lightly in hand, a simple line drawn across paper, these gestures function less as talismans and more as training devices, reminding you to sustain clarity and focus amidst the pull of distraction. They teach that influence is built not in dramatic gestures but in disciplined repetition, in attentiveness to rhythm and pattern, in the meticulous cultivation of presence. Each small act accumulates, weaving a web of subtle impact that is perceptible only to those attuned to the same frequency. Fear and uncertainty are constant companions in this journey. They emerge as internal whispers or as resistance reflected in the actions of others. You encounter the temptation to force outcomes or to shortcut the natural unfolding of events, and the discipline lies in restraint. Every act of measured attention strengthens your ability to hold focus without overreach, to create alignment without imposing dominance, to allow influence to emerge as an echo of presence rather than a product of coercion. True efficacy is measured in subtlety, in the gentle recalibration of energies that occurs when patience governs intention. Meditative practice deepens your power to extend influence ethically. In stillness, you focus on another being or situation, sending clear images of resolution or clarity without attachment to specific outcomes. Later, transformations occur in ways that appear spontaneous yet are guided by the persistence of your attention. You learn that influence is a dialogue with the latent potential within others, a co-creative process in which the alignment of awareness produces results far beyond the scope of any single intention. Here, humility and observation are as crucial as focus. Silence becomes a form of communication as potent as speech. A calm presence in a room of tension can redirect thought, attenuate conflict, and guide decision-making without uttering a word. Others unconsciously synchronize with your steadiness, adopting the tone, posture, or cadence that signals attentiveness and equilibrium. The mastery is in allowing these shifts to occur naturally, maintaining ethical boundaries while recognizing the subtle currents of consent and receptivity. Influence manifests as a shared rhythm, a collaboration in perception rather than a domination of it. In this continuum, attention is currency, ethical discernment is the compass, and presence is the vessel through which subtle power flows. Daily practice refines these capacities: measured breath, deliberate gaze, mindful gestures, and the cultivation of stillness all strengthen the ability to move in resonance with both seen and unseen currents. Over time, small acts accumulate, shaping environments, conversations, and decisions with an almost imperceptible grace. The lessons of patience, attentiveness, and restraint are written not in dramatic victories but in the quiet, lasting recalibration of energy, teaching that true influence thrives in subtlety, integrity, and care. This unfolding prepares you for more profound acts of attunement, where your awareness can extend into spaces beyond immediate perception. You begin to sense that reality itself is responsive, that alignment emerges naturally when intention is disciplined and ethically guided. Patterns reveal themselves, not as linear scripts but as fluid constellations, each interaction a node within a larger network of influence. Your work is to navigate these constellations with mindfulness, to hold clarity where confusion might dominate, and to allow the subtle threads of attention to weave outcomes that honor autonomy, cultivate insight, and produce resonance. You drift into the space where the edge of night and the first breath of dawn are indistinguishable, and the air is thick with unspoken possibilities. Here, influence manifests as a quiet force, not a command, shaping perception and decision through the gentle pressure of intention. You become aware that thought has weight, that attention is a current capable of moving unseen objects, tilting moods, and aligning choices without overt direction. Every gesture, breath, and sustained look operates as a node in this subtle network, sending vibrations through the collective consciousness that others receive unconsciously. The potency of your presence does not rely on spectacle, it is cultivated in sustained stillness, ethical intention, and precise awareness. In this environment, you encounter the mirror of ethics constantly. You must calibrate each interaction with care, noticing how a single word, a sustained glance, or a gentle touch may ripple far beyond immediate perception. True mastery arises when you maintain influence without encroaching upon autonomy. You learn to allow outcomes to unfold in accordance with others' inner rhythm, offering guidance in forms so subtle they feel like discovery rather than imposition. Influence is thus a dialogue, an ethical choreography of awareness, rather than an act of force. The architecture of subtle power relies on symbols and rituals. You anchor intention to small, consistent markers: a stone pressed into your palm, a line etched on paper, a deliberate pause in speech. These symbols do not carry magic themselves but serve as scaffolding for discipline, reminders that attention must be sustained and precise. Repetition and mindfulness transform ordinary actions into carriers of subtle influence, turning ritual into both training and communication. In this practice, the ordinary becomes extraordinary because every act is suffused with conscious attention. Resistance appears both within and around you. Self-doubt and impatience tempt you toward premature action, toward shortcuts that could fracture the delicate patterns you have begun to weave. You learn to recognize these impulses as indicators for refinement rather than reasons for alarm. The art lies in restraint, in holding focus steady, in allowing influence to emerge as a resonance of presence rather than a product of force. Each moment of successful containment strengthens the channels through which subtle power can flow, aligning perception, behavior, and thought in harmony with intention. Meditation deepens this capacity. When you focus on another person or situation, sending images of clarity, resolution, or insight, you allow change to occur through gentle transference. Later, those affected may appear to act spontaneously, unaware of the underlying influence. Here, humility is essential. The purpose is not control but cultivation. Influence functions as a seed planted, tended by the natural rhythms of awareness, yielding results that honor both the autonomy of others and the integrity of your intention. Silence becomes a potent instrument. In the midst of conflict or confusion, a composed presence can redirect thought, calm emotion, and guide decision-making without a single word. People unconsciously attune to steadiness, adopting tone, posture, or cadence in resonance with your clarity. These shifts are subtle, often imperceptible, yet profoundly transformative. Your mastery is measured in how lightly your attention guides rather than coerces, creating alignment through resonance rather than domination. As influence grows, you recognize patterns in human perception and behavior. Small, repeated gestures, deliberate postures, and ethical attentiveness accumulate into a coherent, enduring effect. Over time, these actions subtly reshape conversations, decisions, and environments. You notice that influence is not linear but circulatory, a network of shifts and feedback loops where every act carries consequences, some immediate, others deferred. Mastery involves reading these patterns with sensitivity and ethical discernment, calibrating intention to produce harmonious, lasting resonance. The culmination of this practice reveals that presence, intention, and ethical attentiveness converge to shape reality itself in subtle, transformative ways. Every breath, gesture, and sustained attention becomes a force that alters perception and choice without overt intervention. Influence becomes a craft, a co-creative engagement with the world, in which outcomes emerge naturally from the alignment of awareness, intention, and ethical restraint. Through patient, deliberate practice, you are no longer a passive participant but an active conductor, orchestrating resonance that transforms the flow of energy, thought, and possibility around you, preparing the stage for the final, revelatory movements that will manifest in ways beyond ordinary comprehension.